Thank you very much, everybody, all of you being here in person, in the flesh, and also quite a lot of people online. And welcome to this event, the launch of the Diversified Inclusive Teaching Toolkit. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we're meeting on today, which is the Bidjigal people, and of course the various lands that people online are joining us from. And I'd like to celebrate our efforts to join together and share our different ways of acquiring and deepening and disseminating knowledge through our various communities. My name's Jackie Leach Scully. For those of you who don't know, I'm the director of the Disability Innovation Institute at UNSW. And the DIIU is committed to ensuring inclusive education here at UNSW, and more broadly, investigating various ways in which our research, our learning, our teaching, and our working together can be more inclusive and can be more disability inclusive, particularly in the ways we create knowledge and translate our research to the rest of the world. And I know that Diversified, it's been my pleasure really to have been accompanying, but not part of, but accompanying Diversified from its beginnings to use various landmarks and up to today to the launch of this toolkit. Diversified, as many of you will know, is a neurodivergent-led student initiative that focuses on changing the tertiary education experience, so particularly within UNSW. It's a student and staff partnership, which is, I think, a good working example of co-production in action. And co-production is a way of working that we at the DIIU are deeply committed to, that we encourage and that we support. And for those of you who want to know more about inclusive ways of doing research and other kinds of work and co-production, then come and have a chat with somebody from the DIIU or have a look at our resources online. So that's all you're going to hear from me for today, and it's my great pleasure to hand over to Professor Terry Cumming, who will be telling you more about the history of the project, the toolkit, the panel members, and more.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And thanks everybody for coming. When we were scheduling this, I wasn't paying attention to the fact that it's a really good day to take off. When I was walking the hall of the School of Education, I think there was like 2 other people up there today. So Diversified started, gosh, we're going back about 5 years now, when Ian and Josie, Ian was teaching a class and Josie thought some of his materials were inaccessible, and she decided to fix them with the help of a developer, and they posted it for all of the university community. And I was like, this is great, but it says for students with ADHD, and I have ADHD and I don't like this. This doesn't work for me. And we started to meet and talk about the fact that maybe we just start using the term neurodivergent and recognize that making one modification or accommodation for one person won't necessarily help everybody, and that we all learn differently. And neurodivergence is just part of the human condition. And there were so many of us involved in what started in these small talks, both students and academics, that we put Diversified together. And we started out by holding workshops, and students came and told us what they needed for UNSW to be more accessible to them in general. And we broke these down into systemic things and maybe faculty things and then teaching things. And we've presented that throughout the university whenever anyone will listen to us. And we finally thought, well, what can we do about this? Because a lot of instructors would come to us and say, I would love to be more accessible in my teaching, but I don't know what to do. And at the same time, I have worked towards trying to move universal design from learning from schools to universities, which is no easy feat because it's difficult at school level. So the toolkit was formed based on what students said they needed and the principles of universal design for learning. So we held workshops with both students and instructors. So the toolkit is truly a co-produced set of supports for instructors so they can make their teaching more accessible. Am I leaving anything out? So welcome. We are glad you're here today. There are copies of the implementation roadmap on the tables for you all. We will show a QR code so that you can access the digital version of it. I think we'll let Alastair do his introduction, his video introduction, and then when we come back, I will introduce the panelists.
I'm Alastair McEwin, a Professor of Practice in Disability here at UNSW. Through my work, it is important to me to see systemic and cultural change that results in greater inclusion of disabled people in everything we do, including the way we educate our students. Today's event marks an important step in this journey. I'm honoured to be a part of the launch of the Diversified Inclusive Teaching Toolkit. This is a resource that is compelling for many reasons. Two of those reasons are: one, it speaks to the future of inclusive education, and two, it has been developed right from the start by the very people most impacted. We know, and the research confirms, that education systems still too often exclude by design. For disabled, neurodivergent, and chronically ill students, learning environment can be confusing, inaccessible, or even harmful. That exclusion isn't always intentional. Sometimes it's simply because it's deeply embedded into the way things have always been done. That is what makes this toolkit so powerful. It's grounded in universal design for learning. This is a framework that values flexibility, accessibility, and multiple ways of engaging with content and teaching. It doesn't wait until someone asks for support. It's proactive and inclusive from the start. Just as importantly, this toolkit is student-led and developed through co-production with lived experience. It wasn't created for disabled students, it was created with them. And that distinction matters. What you're seeing today isn't just a set of resources such as checklists and video series. It's more than that. It's the blueprint for the next steps in inclusive education. The toolkit recognizes the diverse cognitive, emotional, and physical needs of our students and is in alignment with those needs. The toolkit ties in directly into those larger priorities we should all care about: educational equity, mental health, retention, student well-being and belonging, and student success. It supports educators to teach more effectively and support students to learn with more confidence. When we talk about neuro inclusion, we're not just talking about minor tweaks. We're talking about the fact that many neurodivergent students, including those with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or mental health and physical condition are left out, even in spaces that claim to be inclusive. This toolkit takes that seriously. We cannot say our systems are inclusive if they fail the student most impacted by exclusion. To my colleagues, educators, program leaders, curriculum designers, and university executives, I say this: use this toolkit, embrace it, share it, embed it, reflect on it, make it part of your professional learning, your staff induction, and your course design reviews. And more than that, listen to the students and educators behind it. Invite co-production, resource it, and commit to long-term change, one small step at a time. This toolkit doesn't just solve a problem. It signals a movement and creates momentum for greater inclusion of disabled and neurodivergent people. I congratulate all those involved in the development of this toolkit. They are to be commended for their leadership and vision in seeing this come to a reality. I look forward to seeing this toolkit become an essential part of the way we do things here at UNSW.
That was amazing. Thank you, Alastair. I would like to just note a couple of things about the toolkit quickly, in that the checklists are there so that people can see what they're already doing to support inclusive education. And I think that's really empowering, because although Alastair said, one of the reasons is we've always done things a certain way. Some of the things we've been doing are good. It's not that we're asking everybody to throw everything away and start all over again. So our general recommendation with the toolkit is to go through and tick the boxes in the checklist, listen to the videos, and then commit to changing a few things at a time. Before we get started with our panel, I would like to introduce the team, the most important part of this. We've got Aaron St. James, who has been a co-founder and our student lead the whole time. He has incredible energy, drive, and passion for this project. So even when the rest of us start falling off to other commitments, he herds all the cats back together and gets us going again. Karen Chris, Ian MacArthur, and not with us today, but very much a part of the team, Chantel Lacrosse, Karen Watson, Veronica Jiang, and not pictured, but also very much part of the team, Aves Parsoning, Jess Macer-Wright, who I think is here online. I see her picture down there, and Josie Bober. So what's in the toolkit? As I mentioned before, there is a set of inclusive teaching checklists. And these checklists are categorized according to our original recommendation list. So they're inclusive learning environment and culture, effective communication and student voice, digital platforms and assistive technologies, successful collaboration, and student autonomy and providing choice. If you look through the implementation roadmap, you will see they are organized differently than that, because I was looking at them from an instructor's point of view and thought, I would really like to know what to do while I'm in different phases of designing my course and implementing my course. So this way people have a choice on how they access the checklists. And that is the part of the implementation roadmap. There's also links in the roadmap to the videos. The 6 supporting videos were designed to deepen your understanding of neurodivergence, but they are created totally by neurodivergent students. And the videos are great because they really hammer home the importance for people with lived experience of actually having this inclusivity in their classes, why it's important to them for certain things to be in place. So there's QR code there if you want the digital version. It's so cute you made that, didn't you? Can we go back to that slide? Sorry. So the roadmap's on the table. You can access it through the QR code. But I think now what we're going to do is go to our panel. And I'm going to introduce Lucy Jellema, who is going to facilitate our Q&A panel. And if my colleagues, the panelists, would come up and join me in the front.
Okay, so while everyone's up here, so we were introduced to our panel members earlier, and I just want to say I'm so honoured that I've been asked to facilitate this panel as someone who is neurodivergent. Like you can see, they're using lived experience through every little part of this. So we have a mix of questions. We're going to start with some questions that were sent before this. We'll then open up for the room to ask questions. But if anything's not answered, you will get an email follow-up. So if you've submitted a question and we don't get time to get to it, please know you will get a response. Okay. So I think the first question is a bit of a fun one, which is, what are you most proud of?
Where do I start? I think the thing that jumps out to me the most is when we had our first series of workshops. It actually made me quite emotional because we had neurodivergent students say that they felt heard and seen for the first time at university. And as a neurodivergent student and staff member, it's like, yeah, it means everything when you just feel like your voice is actually being heard. And yeah, feeling like you're a part of the conversation and a part of, I guess, the thing that you're paying for is, yeah, quite impactful. I think for me on a personal level, like I've just developed so much with this project and with the support of a supportive environment. Like personally and professionally, I've grown so much because I've got like-minded people around me wanting to work on the issues that I've had a lot of challenges with as well. So that, I guess that's probably been some of the things that I'm most proud of. Also just seeing it come to life. It's been such a slog and it's good. Honestly. Yeah, it has, but it's great just to see it out now and yeah, usable, and we're excited to get the feedback just to kind of keep iterating this beautiful thing that we've created.
Anyone else want to share something in particular, or are we echoing the pride that Aaron feels? Yeah, beautiful. So something that was really great about this project is that you had genuine co-design, and something we see a lot with co-design, people say students as partners or co-design, and really it's consultation. So how did you achieve true co-design with this toolkit?
We let Aaron take charge of everything. When we were doing the workshops, I was like, well, the workshops need to be for instructors because that's who's going to be using the toolkit. And they need to tell us what they need to make these recommendations that we got from students happen. And Aaron invited a bunch of students too. He just wasn't having that. So you've been instrumental in that. But I think also it's what we all wanted. None of us have ever been about just being tokenistic. Most of us have the lived experience also, so it's important to us.
I think also having neurodivergent students from art and design actually designing the toolkit themselves, that's been, I guess, very instrumental in the co-design and co-production of this project.
I think it's having all of the students drive things, I think that's really important. As academics, it's in our MO to kind of take things and take over and run with it, right? So I think it's been a lesson for all of us to sit back and to support when needed, which has been difficult, I have to say, but rewarding.
It is difficult sometimes. For me, collaboration kind of goes back a long way. For my whole professional life, collaboration has really been a kind of inherent aspect of what I do as a designer and an educator. And in a way, this is a response to your first question about what I'm most proud of. I think that this is what I'm most proud of, that it has in fact been an often challenging but ultimately successful instance of co-design and co-production. You know, right from the very outset, like we mentioned, Josie Bober was a student in one of my graphics classes, and she sent me an email. Ian, I don't understand your brief. It's too complicated. And in fairness, it was complicated. Often design briefs are. Excuse me. And so from that point, I started a conversation with her and actually rather than be the teacher at the front of the room and say, well, this is what we should do about it, I let Josie tell me what she needed. And that started, I think, the general orientation towards a student-led collaboration. And so I'm most proud of that. And I think that it has become our MO, it's really what we're about. And I'm just stoked to see how we've come through that process. Yeah.
I've already thought of another question for the open question time, just it hasn't taken long. So I might go to Karen for this one. I'm trying to be fair and make sure everyone gets a go. I'm ticking it off. So what would you say, what would full institutional support look like for a project like this? Like what systems need to change? What would you need to turn this to a whole university-wide?
That's an easy one. Funding, FUNDING. I mean, it says it all. Yeah, and I think there's conversations that are happening in lots of different sort of areas. So I think it's happening. I think it's definitely happening. And I Diversified have got really great ways of tackling what we already do. We've put together systems of collaborating and systems of working with students so that they're leading, that I think work well. So I don't think that we have to reinvent the wheel necessarily. But there are a lot of different areas in the university that could be supporting us, like the DIRU, Ashley Harrington with the DIAP. There's lots of different ways that we can be supported, but I think fundamentally it's funding, really.
The students.
Yeah, and we can actually work quite solidly on things without stop and go.
It would be good to have one person, preferably a student, who had like somewhat of a permanent position to run everything and have the time, and because we get funding, so there's bits and pieces of funding for students. But because of that, also our students come and go, and they will anyway as they graduate and move on. But Erin's been our stalwart through it all person. So yeah, it would be great if we weren't always scrambling for the next grant.
I think also having someone at a senior position like Alastair backing this project is huge. And we finally got Vice Chancellor support. It's taken a long way to get there. And like we've got Verity's first support too now, which is great. But I think, yeah, having senior executive people backing this as well, and yeah, really helping it be a sustainable thing. Everything within the DI space needs sustainability. So I think, yeah, that's probably one of the most important things as well.
Thank you so much. Now, Ian, a question for you. How do you plan to keep the toolkit evolving? Because you've been here from day dot about the assessment. So how can we keep evolving this toolkit, and how can the community contribute?
In a sense, my gut feeling in terms of responding to that is that it's really up to what the students and the people who need this kind of project to really define what that is. But it does need to evolve and become, you know what, from the very first workshops, I've always felt that what we've got here as a toolkit should almost be, I'm hesitant to use the word, but a compulsory professional development thing that every academic has to do. In ADA, a number of years ago, we had a compulsory program for Indigenous knowledge and awareness in the faculty. And I think this is an issue or a realm of knowledge that every academic would benefit from going through. And that was based on a video series, a course that was produced by Indigenous students, just like our toolkit was, and the video component in particular of our toolkit was produced by neurodivergent students. That would be one way to kind of roll this out kind of across the university in a way where it reached everybody, every academic. I guess that's what I would like to see as a kind of short-term or intermediate-term goal. And no doubt it would need to be refined. What we have would need to be refined and presented as a course. But I think that would be extremely beneficial to the pedagogical culture of UNSW.
I'm just going to add on something quickly. When Ian says that all academics, I mean guest lecturers, tutors, like casual lecturers, everybody needs to be informed on how to educate in an inclusive manner. As I've seen within my School of Babs, it's like there's a lot of lectures that I have to go to that are just not accessible, and are just walls of text and multicolored, and I'm just like, this causes a lot of chaos and anxiety, and it's just like casual staff don't get enough support, and I think that they need the support as well. Yeah.
And to answer the second part of your question, how the community can get involved in refining, like any other grant, of course, there's research behind this. So we released the toolkits early, just before term 1, to interested staff, people that wanted to pilot it. So they've done a survey, a pre-implementation survey, and they will be asked within the next couple of weeks to do the post-survey, and then we're going to follow up with some interviews. So hopefully we'll have some good data that will let us know what was working, what wasn't working, and then we can start refining that way. And there's also some plans to create some things that could also go into the toolkit, more specific things like making those briefs more readable.
Yeah, I agree, Terry. And I think I'd like to see the toolkit, once everybody's checked it off, more advanced versions of the toolkit as people become more comfortable with implementing, because it is in some ways a very sort of beginning introductory.
It's the primer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great to hear, especially the different levels. I'll just share a personal story. So when I started here, I asked Terry, could I please see an example of an assessment? Because Terry was actually my tutor when I did my master's here. And I know she's an expert in UDL. And she goes, oh, like, here's an example, but I'm not sure it's the best example of UDL. It's like, you are literally the UDL expert at this university. And so I think that's for all of us, there's always more that we can do. It's an evolving discipline. So for educators that may look at that and go, oh, there's always more. What's your recommendations that if they feel a bit at sea in terms of inclusive education and accessibility, how do you feel like this toolkit supports those educators to just make a start?
I think what I said earlier about going through the checklist and ticking off what you're already doing. I don't know about other people, and it could just be my neurodivergence, but I will actually put things on lists that I forgot to put on the list, but I did just so I could tick them off. Because ticking things off is very satisfying and it's very affirming. So knowing that you're not at sea, knowing that you're already beginning to be an expert, and then choosing the things that fit in with your teaching style the most, or things that when you watch the video resonated with you the most. Wow, I could be doing this and make that person's whole experience so much better. So I think the videos can help ignite a passion that will overtake any sense of, I don't know, I don't want to say inadequacy, nervousness. New things are scary.
I just want to say, don't be afraid to ask students in your class. I think more critically. Yeah.
And to follow that, like listen, like actively listen to your students. You know, it can be a complete transformational moment of realization. You know, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. I didn't realize my brief was too complicated for certain students to process. I didn't realize I needed to restructure it and lay it out in a different way. So just that act of actually listening is so critical, and it's fundamental, as we know, to effective communication to everybody. But yeah, that's a big one, I think.
Kind of going on a tangent, backtracking to the last question, but I think it would be great to, and we've tried to look at this before, is getting like a series of like case studies of who's doing something well. So then we can showcase that through workshops so academics can actually see how to do things in real time. Then there's recordings of these things, because it's all well and good to say that this needs to be done. But if an academic doesn't have the time, which we all know that's true, and they don't know how to do it, I'm a very, like, I love videos because it just explains things and processes. But if it's text, my dyslexia is like, I'm at ADHD, is like, it's so difficult. And yeah, I think that's something that would be, I guess, beneficial, I guess, for next steps when we have the capacity and the funding. So yeah.
All right, one last before we open up. What role does leadership play in embedding this toolkit? Like how can it be more than just a download that sits there and you swear you're going to come back to it and then you never really look at it? How can we make sure we actually embed this into our practice and make sure that we are using it? How can leadership support that?
I think maybe communities of practice would be one way to get started with that. I feel that we have a lot of support around the university now. The DIIU, as Jackie said, has been there from the beginning. Charlotte, gosh, you hear anything that you think applies or could help us, and you are right on the messages with us. And when we started the study, we opened up a community of practice for the participants on teams, but it might be great to work more with the PVCESE or EDI and get some of what Erin was just talking about. It would be nice to see examples from different schools on how the different parts of the checklist were implemented, because it would look very different in your science classes than it would in my teaching classes.
I think there is often academics that would normally be open to adapting or including inclusive teaching in what they do. And so I think it would be helpful if leadership was to think about the people that aren't necessarily adopting these kinds of initiatives.
To have a promotion.
Oh, yeah, in promotion. That's a
Teaching
good point.
awards. To have those things go in promotion, teaching awards. I am a new member of the EF community. So I have moved from a combined track to an education focused track. And I really think that there can be leadership within that group also that can really help move this along.
I think we've been in collaboration with the University of Melbourne and their neurodiversity project, and they actually had vice chancellor support from. They were a grassroots project initially, and then they had vice chancellor support, which was spread out over 2 years financially for them. And I think that just having that support was, I guess, something that I wish we had from not the very beginning, because I didn't have it from then. But yeah, I think that just having leadership at that level, vice chancellor level, definitely has an impact that just trickles down from tier to tier, which will eventually get to academics, both educational and yeah. I hope that makes sense.
And I should have mentioned Karen Watson, who's not here. She is the EF person. So I know we have unwavering support from them.
Okay, that's wonderful. All right, I'm going to open up the floor. Does anyone have a question? Okay, excuse me while I run around the room.
Thank you, and well done to everyone in Diversified. It's fantastic to see this launched, and it's great to have a toolkit that so one of the teams I lead is ELS. It's great to have a toolkit that we can recommend to academic staff when we're working with them as well. So I guess my question is really around academics in the classroom, and when they're trying to implement this and they think, no, that sounds really good, but I actually have no idea how I would do that in my classroom, or I thought I'd already done that and now a student's telling me it's not working for them, because we know that different things work for different people, right? And students aren't homogenous, and neurodivergent students aren't homogenous. And so where do they go? How do they get help if they've tried, but one student's put their hand up, another couple of students put their hand up, they're just not sure how they can change that assessment? Where would you recommend what's the next step for them?
I think the first step is your faculty's ed dev team. They are usually really good at that sort of thing. I know in ADA, Aves is working on something similar to the toolkit, only much, much bigger. Just a set of resources from the university. Same as kind of like what you've been trying to do, Lucy. Yeah, what you've done, I should say. I just feel like I've been there throughout the different things. I wasn't sure where you were at. I think there's always people where you're right, though. We're just not sure who to ask. I had a student in my course this term come to me and tell me I didn't provide enough clarity in my assessment instructions. I have videos, I have scaffold, I have all this stuff. And I was like, okay, what else can I do? So I asked the student, which I think is your first place to start. And she sent me briefs from other instructors. And she said, everything you have is great, but could you also do this? And I was like, sure, I could do that. And now we're looking at doing it for a school, for our whole school. So I think it's that sort of thing. When Ian said, listen to them, and be open. I always ask my students, is there some other way I can support you? They say, I have an ELP. Great. I read it. What else can I do? Because I think there's always something else that you just can't mandate in an ELP, but I could do.
And ELS work with academic disability learning advisors as well for each faculty. So they could be somebody that you can reach out to, and they're on your new Teaching Gateway, the new website. So you can find out who they are. Yep.
Karen's one of them.
And you could always reach out to us as well. But I do think the listening to your student thing is just so critical, because they probably know what they need. And I don't think you can go past that fundamentally.
Just echoing what Ian said quickly, when we've given workshops to UNSW College, for example, or Business EDI, for example, like they've just asked us questions which are very specific, and we've given them a more like, I guess, holistic approach, but at the same time, it's just coming back to the student and asking them, and yeah, just workshopping that, and that might take however long it's going to take, but the student's going to feel heard. And if that's all that comes out of it, it still might be it's much better than just them not feeling heard. So yeah.
And as I said in the beginning, when Josie created those, and I looked at them and said, this confuses me. Or that student said to me, you're not doing what I need to understand. There's a reason why all 3 pillars of UDL start with the words multiple means of. There's not one thing. There's no panacea, folks. I wish there was. I wish there was a little wand I could wave and say, if you do this, you're going to reach all your students and everyone's going to be happy. But the state of humans is neurodivergence. We all learn and process information differently. So the more ways we can present things, the more ways we can give students to show us that they've met the learning objectives in our courses, the better everybody's going to be, the more accessible things will be.
And I think if I can just add to that, even though I shouldn't be adding things, but I am, is you don't have to do it all at once. So I can imagine Terry's, list of all the different ways to do the assignment. There is no way she did that all in one day or in one term. So don't kill yourself trying to, do 1,000 things. Sorry, I should work yourself to the bone. Sorry, bad metaphor. Also, I will just remind people online, when I'm opening questions to the floor, it includes the digital floor. So if you do have questions, please put them through. Are there any other questions for our panel? Yeah, we've got one here
can
in
you hear
person,
me?
and then we'll go to the digital one.
Congratulations on this toolkit. It looks great. I'm really looking forward to using it. I had a question both about the toolkit and then the next iteration of it. I guess, you've already mentioned, it's in the title, right? Diversified, so diversity. So the student body is really diverse. It's in terms of neurodivergence as well. But there's other intersections, I guess, of diversity that I see mentioned in this in terms of cultural diversity. And so I'm curious in terms of the development of this, how you included other perspectives in terms of, non-Anglo, non-white kind of aspects to inclusion, because you've already mentioned that you kind of collaborated with EDI as well. And yeah, going forward, I think there is more. I'm interested how you're thinking about cross-pollination with, how neurodivergence also intersects with, language diversity or other kinds of diversity.
A very poignant question for a very white panel.
I was just going to say, don't let the Anglo-ness of this panel fool you. No, I think it's very valid, but our workshops did not look like this.
That's reassuring.
And the videos don't look like this. And it wasn't even a matter of seeking out international students or seeking out people with different sexual orientations or different anythings. We just invited people and people came. So the natural diversity of people showed up. And really, UDL was not made just for disabilities. It wasn't designed just for that. It's for everybody. So that's how those things got included in there, because some of those issues were brought to the forefront in the workshops, and we made sure we addressed them.
I also just want to mention my mother's Indigenous to New Zealand as well, but we did have international students, and we know that's a huge concern for them just kind of stepping into this field. Also mental health as well. We have had students from the queer community, like myself, and other students who are from that community as well. And yeah, we've tried to have a diverse range of students, especially when we're creating a video series, to have like as many voices as we can represented. And when we are able to get more funding and we can have more reach, then we might have greater student like diversity more than we have before. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that when we do booths, like during Diversity Week, and even when we were over at the college, it's the international students that show up. There's a lot of intersectionality, and we do recognize that.
Sorry.
I think this is a really, really critical question. And I guess to some extent, I kind of relate to it a lot because a lot of my work in my research particularly, but obviously it plays into the teaching as well, given our student cohort. A lot of my work has been in China. And so that's played out in my research in that I've had a big focus on transcultural collaboration and interdisciplinary collaboration. I think and actually this morning I had this kind of idea. How can I explain it? I kind of have a little bit of a problem with the term universal, and I would like to replace it with the term pluriversal, which draws on the ideas of Arturo Escobar, who is an academic from Colombia, I think, who proposed this idea of the pluriverse, which is the underlying principle is we want a world where many worlds fit. And that's been a big kind of influence on me in recent years. And yeah, I wonder what a pluriversal design for learning would mean. And it's just a brain thought I had this morning. But anyway, I think that, you know, you can start to see a response to that question in our videos because there are students from different cultural backgrounds and different sexual orientations and so forth. Yeah, I think it's something that we should expand upon as we go forward.
Thank you for that question. And I think that often it's for us to make a space for others to exist in. And I think that's really important. And you know, I think we have to continually acknowledge the privilege that we're sitting in, all of us. And there's often different levels of that with everybody on this panel. There's different levels of privilege in different ways and different intersections on this panel. So thank you for raising that. I think that's a really important question. And I think maybe the next steps are putting that more at the forefront of what we're doing so it's more visible. Although I can also want to acknowledge that can be difficult for some around disclosure. And so disclosure can be, for people that are experiencing intersectional disadvantage, that can be difficult. So we just need to be aware of that as well and acknowledge that.
I also just want to say we've got representation from like caregivers and mothers of people who are of kids and students who are neurodivergent and disabled, also first in family, also chronically ill, mental and physical, and yeah, physically disabled. What else have I missed? We have had, we've tried to be as accessible and inclusive as we can. And yeah, as we create a more safer space, hopefully, yeah, we just can cast the net out wider because that's what we want. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, but I do have one from, we're going to do in the room. There's an online question that I think is quite good. So Ariella asks, as a student, what can we do if a tutor or lecturer doesn't want to implement these measures? And then she has a second part and how can we get involved moving forward? So there's two questions there, but I think the first part is definitely the big one. What can you do as a student? Because obviously there's a power dynamic at play there. What would you recommend?
Come and speak to me and I'll advocate for you. Honestly, I will. No, I think the student ambassador program has always been such a powerful thing within science, and it's in other schools and faculties. Because when you can get students advocating for students that then speak to academics, when students sometimes don't feel comfortable speaking to academics because of those power dynamics, it's like that is a way of bridging the gap and getting those questions about accessibility and inclusion that aren't being addressed in the course. Yeah.
I think reach out to ELS, right? I think, yeah, that's where I'd go.
One thing for us to say, well, these are some things we should be doing, but actually there's a really practical hands-on. Here's some examples of how. So I think it's really going to.
Yeah, having those conversations, and even if directing them somewhere, finding better ways of directing them to the right place, right?
Yeah, and I think the toolkit, I'll just repeat what I said, I think the toolkit really helps in those conversations, so thank you.
I definitely agree with the ELS thing. Real life example, next term I need at-home exams because of my health, and I've got labs that go for 4 hours from 2 to 6 p.m, which I've never had before, and I'm not looking forward to, because my cognition and my medication just not last that long. So it's just like having ELS speak on my behalf has been huge, because I've tried initially and I've just had rejection. So like they've had to step in, which has been great. But also, I guess coming back to the question in terms of like how can students join, I guess we have had work integrated learning student actually join us. So we have to also thank Jasmine too for her contribution to the project as well. And yeah, when I guess we have more funding, we will have more workshops and ask for student participation, because we don't want students volunteering their time. I do currently, but it's a lot to ask students to volunteer, even though they might want to. It's like we'd rather pay them for their time than not. So would like to create positions for students eventually when we have the capacity, but we currently don't. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much to our panel members, and thank you to everyone here. One more question? Oh, we do have time. Oh, exciting.
Thank you. So we talk a lot, and rightfully so, about the challenges and barriers faced by neurodiverse students. I was wondering if you could, very quickly, knowing on time, speak to how the Diversified Toolkit leverages the strengths, or at least makes space for the strengths that neurodiverse learners have within their cognition, within their abilities, within the power of what it means to be neurodivergent.
Ooh, what a great question.
That's a really good question. I have to say that I don't believe any of the things on the toolkit are phrased from deficit language, for starters. We were very careful about that. I think every time we look at all of you and say, listen to your students, that's us coming from a strengths-based perspective. Metacognition is everything. And most students at this stage have an idea of what they need, but not all students do. You know, I'll say, well, what can I do to make this more comprehensible for you? And sometimes they'll go, I don't know. And then I have to think fast and go back to my special ed roots and try to find some other ways to present material. But again, that's also when ed developers, ELS, our disability champions or advisors, where they can step in and also help. But I think we're always trying to look at things from a strengths-based perspective. I always ask my students, who learns best by reading? Like when Aaron just said he wants videos, I am the first person to look for a transcript, or I'm putting that video on 2.5 times. I cannot sit there and watch the video. So, you know, even in our group, which is one of the challenges of working together, our neurodivergence is very different to one another's.
What do I say about this? I'm going to refer to another theorist, Carl Rogers, from the 1970s, in fact. So in a way, it's not new, but one of Carl Rogers' key ideas was that you meet the student where they're at. And if you meet the student where you're at, you're embracing the whole person. their strengths and their challenges. And I like that's something I keep going back to. And I think it's such an insightful, powerful kind of principle. And so, yeah, the toolkit is framed in very positive language around the strengths of students, because, you know, neurodivergence in many senses is a kind of superpower, or at the least gives certain strengths and you know, play to students' strengths. Now, I'm a father of two neurodivergent young people, young boys, and that's something I've learnt to do over the years, to really focus in on those special capabilities. It works, you know, and sure, not all the time. They don't, as Terry said, they don't always know what they need, but maybe that's where the design thing comes back into the equation and the relationship. You know, well, let's work it out. What will work, or what won't? Try and solve it together, or at least get involved. It's hard to solve everything.
Just quickly, sorry, did you want to say something, Karen? I think this is where UDL comes into practice, because if I am taking a course next term and I love the convener because it's just, it says on the course, you can present in a video format or other format, like video or other format. And I was like, oh my God, I've never seen this before. Like, what is this? You allow a student to play to their strengths. If they're not confident speaking in public, it's like, okay, I can actually record something. So it's just like providing those options actually does allow a student to really step into their strengths rather than getting them to force themselves into something that they're not comfortable with, not getting the grades that they've given so much effort for because it's not playing to their strengths. So yeah, I guess hopefully that kind of wraps that up.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming along today. Now, for the people online, I believe the event in your calendar lasts for another half an hour because the people in person, we have some food and we can network. For the people online, maybe use that calendar block to have a look at the toolkit, and feel free to continue to post questions and things in the chat if it doesn't block off. I think it should be left. But yes, thank you everyone so much for attending. Thank you to Diversified for creating such a wonderful toolkit. And does anyone have anything else to say to wrap it up?
As Alastair and Terry mentioned, it's like just one small change every term, every second term will make a huge difference eventually. And it might seem quite overwhelming, but it's just, yeah, one small change. And also looking at what you're doing well is, I guess, yeah, how I want to wrap things up. Thank you, everybody.